Hi everyone, welcome back to DGMC, Diwan-e-Ghalib, Meri Zubani. To all our returning viewers, we are very happy you could join us again. And to the new viewers, we are delighted you discovered the podcast and decided to tune in for the first time. Now, if you were with me in the previous episode, you know that currently we are going through Ghazal 27 from Diwan-e-Ghalib, Dard Minnat-Kash-e-Dawaa na hua. We have already covered 5 couplets. Today we are going to get into the 6th couplet. As always, I'm going to read the couplet. We will get into the keywords, concepts, and then finally into the DGMZ personal impression. So this is how the couplet goes. क्या वो नमरूद की खुदाई थी, क्या वो नमरूद की खुदाई थी, बंदगी में मेरा भला ना हुआ. So let's do an approximate translation. क्या वो नमरूद की खुदाई थी? Was it the divinity of Namrud? बंदगी में मेरा भला ना हुआ. That in dedication and worship I did not receive anything good. The outcome was not good for me of my dedication and worship. So that's a very approximate translation. Let's start picking the keywords. First word, Namrud. So this is King Nimrod, as we know him in English. A cruel king with a reputation of being tyrannical, having a god complex, if you may. We are going to get into great detail about this king as we come to the impression of the first line. But for now, a cruel king from olden times. Moving on to the next word, Khudaai. So Khudaai is translated to divinity. Khuda ki khudai, right? So the divinity of the divine. That is what Khudaai is. It's a beautiful word. It is a beautiful concept. It has nuances to it, but Urdu poetry has beautiful poetry around Khudaai, right, in so many contexts. Today, through couplets, we will cover a few as part of the keywords. So, Faiz Ahmad Faiz ka ye sher. Gar aaj auj pe hai, तालाए रकीब तो क्या, ये 4 दिन की खुदाई तो कोई बात नहीं. So the approximate translation is, if today the reputation or the rank of my enemy is at its prime, is at its peak, it is fine, because this type of glory is short-lived. 4 दिन की खुदाई, right? This type of glory, this type of power, this type of divinity my enemy is feeling is short-lived. 4 days, right? Give or take. So it doesn't bother me. It's fine. If today he is at its peak, I know that this type of divinity is short-lived. It is not going to last. साहिल लुधियानवी का ये शेर, तख्त क्या चीज़ है और लाल व जवाहर क्या हैं, इश्क वाले तो खुदाई भी लुटा देते हैं. ब्यूटीफुल सॉन्ग. जुर्म उल्फत की हमें लोग सज़ा देते हैं. सो द अप्रॉक्सीमेट ट्रांसलेशन ऑफ द कपलेट इज़, what standing does a throne have? What standing do rubies and emeralds and jewels have? The lovers are people who would give up divinity itself in their quest for love. Forget about thrones and jewels and treasures, etc. They would give up divinity itself. So that takes care of Khudaai. Moving on to the next word, Bandagi. Now Bandagi is worship. अहमद फराज का ये शेर, बंदगी हमने छोड़ दी है फराज, क्या करे लोग जब खुदा हो जाएं. So the approximate translation is, I have given up worshipping. I have given up divinity, right? Because what does one do when humans start floating around as gods? right? There is no sense in worship anymore if humans themselves start proclaiming that they are gods. Beautiful couplet. दाग दहलवी का ये शेर, आशिकी से मिलेगा ए जाहिद, बंदगी से खुदा नहीं मिलता. So one of our favorites at DGMZ. The approximate translation is, it is love that will help you find him, O wise one. Worship and prayer and all these rituals, etc., will not help you find God. It is love that will help you find him. Now, bandagi is worship, but bandagi has another nuance to it, which is related to captivity or bondage, right? Or being of service to somebody. The intensity of the nuances can differ, but the fact is that band, right, closed, captured, also plays into the word bandagi. Uspe आलमा इकबाल का ये शेर, बंदगी में घट के रह जाती है एक जुए कम आब, बंदगी में घट के रह जाती है एक जुए कम आब, और आज़ादी में बहरे बेकरार है जिंदगी. Beautiful couplet, right? So the approximate translation is, when in captivity, it reduces to a river that is running short of water, a river that is dried up of any water, doesn't even have a drop of water. And in freedom, it is like a shoreless ocean, an ocean with no limits, no shores. That is what life is. If you keep it in captivity, it runs dry, but if you let it free, it has no limits. Beautiful couplet again. So that takes care of bandagi, both from a worship perspective and a captivity perspective. Now moving on to Bhalaa. So Bhalaa is good, positive, and इस पे अपने मिर्ज़ा गालिब का शेर, हाँ भला कर तेरा भला होगा, हाँ भला कर तेरा भला होगा, और दरवेश की सदा क्या है. Beautiful couplet. My throat is still not okay, so bear with me. So the approximate translation is, do good and good will be done unto you. हाँ भला कर तेरा भला होगा. Yes, do good and good will be done unto you. और दरवेश की सदा क्या है? What else do all wise ones keep chanting, keep preaching, keep saying? This is the core, this is the crux of their message. Do good and good will be done unto you. So that takes care of all the keywords, Namrud, Khudaai, Bandagi and Bhalaa. Let's move on to the impression. First line. क्या वो नमरूद की खुदाई थी? Was it divinity of Namrud? Now, of course, to enjoy this couplet, to understand its nuances, we will need to familiarize ourselves with Namrud, or Nimrod, as King Nimrod, as he is referred to in English texts, biblical texts. So Namrud as a word, right? Literally, it is a word used to describe a powerful personality that has a God complex, a personality that makes claims of being the divine one, makes claims to divinity itself. Historically, Nimrod is a king from Babylon, ancient Babylon, and there are many stories associated with him. We will get into his so-called story. Figuratively, Nimrod or Namrud is used to describe someone who is cruel, oppressive, tyrannical, somebody who is self-obsessed, right? I, me, myself. There is no one above me, kind of a complex. And then proverbially, right, idiomatically, मुहावरे के तौर पे नमरूद की खुदाई is a phrase, Nimrod's divinity is a phrase that one uses again to describe extreme pride, extreme vanity, and of course self-proclaimed divinity, the God complex. So that is how the word plays in different texts, in different circumstances. Now getting to the story of Nimrod. Bear with me as I read this out to you. It is critical if you want to understand the couplet. Nimrod was the king of Babylon, who ruled over his people with tyranny and cruelty, to exert his authority over them. One day, while Nimrod was bathing, surrounded by a group of beautiful women, a man dressed in black suddenly appeared. The dark-clothed man spoke with a mocking tone and asked Nimrod, "So you think you own the land and all that's on it?" Enraged, Nimrod ordered immediate execution of the dark-clothed man. Upon returning to his chambers, Nimrod found the same dark-clothed man in his chambers. Astonished, Nimrod asked, "Who are you?" The dark-clothed man replied, "I am the king of light, the one created with light. If you wish to become a great ruler of all lands and their inhabitants, you must see my true form." Nimrod immediately agreed, and the dark-clothed man transformed into his true form, a magnificent figure covered in hair all over his body. This was Iblis. Iblis was none other than the same Iblis who was cursed by God when he refused to prostrate before Adam, a new creation of God. Iblis commanded Nimrod to prostrate to him in exchange for power, and Nimrod, seeking power, prostrated in front of Iblis. That made Nimrod the first human to sell his soul to the devil in exchange for authority and power. Iblis taught Nimrod magic, trickery, and manipulation to control and enchant people, through which Nimrod created a huge following for himself, making him the greatest ruler. After mastering all forms of magic under the tutelage of Iblis, Nimrod followed Iblis's order to kill his own father and hence seized power of the entire kingdom. Obeying every command from Iblis, Nimrod continued to become a powerful ruler and a skilled sorcerer. He ruled with an iron fist and was feared by all. He had an invincible army, and he was the first to wear a golden crown on his head. Now, during Nimrod's rule, there was in parallel a man named Ibrahim, who would later become known as Prophet Ibrahim in Islamic faith and Abraham in Judeo-Christian faith. Abraham was increasingly getting influential as he preached unwavering faith to the one God and opposed all forms of idolatry practiced by Nimrod and Nimrod's people. Abraham's monotheistic beliefs clashed with King Nimrod, who ruled over the land and demanded to be worshipped as a god and wanted to end the monotheism doctrine propagated by Abraham. After several failed attempts to convince people of the one and only God, Abraham, in a drastic move, took an axe and shattered all the idols in the temple except the largest one, which he left with the axe around its neck. When Nimrod's people came back, they saw the broken idols in the temple and wondered who did it. As they investigated, it was found out that it was done by Abraham. King Nimrod, when made aware of this, was very angry and had Abraham arrested and put on trial. Abraham welcomed the trial, since this was exactly the opportunity he was looking for to highlight the falsity of people's beliefs in public. During the trial, when asked if he had broken the idols, Abraham smiled and told the people to ask the biggest idol that was still whole. Abraham insisted that this idol that escaped destruction would have surely witnessed the destruction of the other idols and would know who did it. As Abraham had expected, the people were unable to ask the remaining idol any question and unable to receive any answer from it either. Enraged, King Nimrod ordered a huge fire to be built for Abraham as punishment for his defiance. The wood was stacked high and the flames roared with intensity. As the moment approached, a tense hush fell over the crowd as Prophet Ibrahim was thrown into the fire. The fire's scorching heat was so intense that it could be felt even from a distance. The fire was kept burning for days in order to completely burn Abraham and collect his ashes. After the fire extinguished several days later, it was found that Abraham remained untouched by the fire, except that his bonds were burned. Nimrod was furious. Some days after the incident in which Abraham was put into the fire, a severe famine struck the country and people ran out of food ration and drinks. This necessitated all people having to go to the court of Nimrod and request grain from him. In return, Nimrod would make them acknowledge him as God. The one who would acknowledge him as God would get grain, and the one who would not acknowledge him as God would return empty-handed. Abraham too went to Nimrod for getting grain. As expected, Nimrod asked Abraham, "Who is your Lord?" Abraham replied, "My Lord is the one who resurrects the dead and gives death." Having heard this, Nimrod said, "I also possess this power." He ordered 2 prisoners to be presented to him. He released one of them and got the other one killed to prove that he had power to give death. Abraham, after witnessing this act of Nimrod, asked Nimrod, "Now, bring the prisoner you just had executed back to life." To which Nimrod had no response. Abraham further declared, "My Lord causes the sun to rise in the east. Nimrod, if you are God, make the sun rise in the west." Nimrod could not answer to this request either. Embarrassed and enraged, Nimrod told Abraham he has no grain to give him and told Abraham to go to his Lord and ask for grain. Empty-handed, Abraham left the court of Nimrod and headed back home. On his way, Abraham saw a mound of sand. He filled his bag with sand from that mound and took it home. After reaching home, he kept the bag on the side and slept. When Abraham's wife Sarah opened his bag, she found it full of grain, which she promptly used to bake loaves of bread. She then woke up Abraham. Abraham asked her where she got the grain from, and she replied, "It was from the same grain that you brought back in your bag." Abraham then realized that the sand he had bought had turned to grain by God's miracle. Nimrod, meanwhile, continued to become more and more cruel and unjust, and his destruction was drawing near. God sent an angel to call Nimrod to worship the one and only God. Arrogant and defiant, Nimrod responded to the angelic call with baseless claims and arrogance. God sent the angel a second time, and Nimrod again refused. God then sent the angel a third time, and Nimrod once again refused to accept the divine message. Nimrod summoned Abraham and said to him, "Tell your God that I neither fear him nor need him. Go tell him that the whole world is in awe of me. All people are obedient to my command. If he is the God of heaven, I am the God of earth. Where are his armies? If the sky itself fell on my army, they could hold it up with their swords. Tell your God I challenge him to a battle. He has no say on earth. The whole earth belongs to me. It is my kingdom." On the day appointed, the brigades and regiments assembled on the battlefield, forming themselves in ranks. God gave his army of mosquitoes their orders and sent these humble creatures in attack against Nimrod's army. The host of mosquitoes hurled themselves in their hundreds of millions against the army of Nimrod. They filled the soldiers' mouths, eyes, and ears, biting with a vengeance. When the cavalry horses met the mosquitoes' onslaught, they started to bolt in all directions, unseating their riders as they fled. In the space of half an hour, destruction had overtaken Nimrod's army, more than 100,000 strong. Nimrod himself left the battlefield, taking refuge in one of his castles. He bolted up all doors and windows. In spite of the great miracle he had witnessed on the battlefield, he could not bring himself to repent and accept God still. It is said there was one lame mosquito with a damaged wing who had been unable to obey the divine command to attack the stubborn king and his army. The mosquito is said to have addressed God, saying, "O God, what a sinful, unlucky creature I must be, that you should deprive me of my share in this battle. If only my leg and my wing had been sound, I would have done my bit in fighting this enemy of yours." God then gave the mosquito command, "Go now, you destroy that cursed one." The lame mosquito made its way limping to the castle where Nimrod was hiding. Getting in through a keyhole, it went and settled on Nimrod's knee. There it rested, recovering from its exhaustion. Nimrod spotted the insect and tried to kill it, but for all his efforts, Nimrod could not kill the mosquito, which now went up inside his nose into his brain. The mosquito started eating the membrane of Nimrod's brain. It is said that Nimrod beat his head against one rock after the other. Such was the pain that it is said Nimrod actually appointed salaried officials to hit him on the head with mallets. The blows gave him a brief respite, since they interrupted the insect's work inside his brain. As soon as the mosquito began eating his brain, once more Nimrod would cry, "Help, help, hit me." Nimrod would get angry with those who did not hit him hard enough and would increase the salaries of those who were hard hitters. The so-called God of the earth was being beaten by his own servants. One day, one of these servants wielded the mallet too hard, and Nimrod's evil soul departed. It is said they laid his corpse in the pit of hell, which was his grave. Now, that's a summary of Nimrod's story that we created from various available online resources. The story is accounted to briefly in Quran. The story has some of its aspects that appear in Bible, and then of course there's a lot of different narrations and versions of the mythical story of Nimrod that we are aware of. Now, despite all the multiple versions and narrations, the highlights and the moral message of this story kind of remains the same, irrespective which version you are reading, right? So the highlights of the story focus on the pride and power that gave Nimrod this god complex and fed his extreme cruelty, his extreme arrogance, his extreme pride and tyranny on people. The second highlight of the story is the great fire that Nimrod created, which burned for several days at end to finish Abraham, like we said, who would later become known as Prophet Ibrahim in Islamic faith and Prophet Abraham in the Judeo-Christian faith. And the other highlight of the story is, of course, the great fall of Nimrod, right? How his end comes at the hand of something as humble, as small, as insignificant as a mosquito. So those are the highlights of the story. They pretty much remain the same across all versions. Now the moral of the story focuses on the rise and fall of Nimrod, where we see that his self-proclaimed divinity is hollow, since it possesses none of the holiness, none of the righteousness that belongs only to God. His divinity, or Khudaai, had no power to perform blessings, to grant miracles. His divinity also had no power to forgive sins, to show mercy, like the divinity of the one and only God. The story is a great example of the eternal war between good and evil and the ultimate victory of God and his good. जब्बार वासिफ का ये शेर, रोज़े अव्वाल से जहाँ में दो तरह का है यकीन, रोज़े अव्वाल से जहाँ में दो तरह का है यकीन, एक इब्राहिम पर और दूसरा नमरूद पर. The approximate translation is, from the very first day of existence, from the very beginning, there has always been two types of fates that have existed. The first one is on Ibrahim and the second one follows Namrud. So again, the good and bad. Now, keeping Nimrod's story in mind, let's read the first line again. क्या वो नमरूद की खुदाई थी? Ghalib in this couplet draws on the fact that one can take two approaches in terms of divinity. In the first line, he details the first approach. This is the divinity approach that was adopted by King Nimrod. And this was an approach that was embedded in hollow pride and vanity, cruelty, tyranny, force, power hunger. Again, like we said, this type of divinity had no ability to grant blessings, to perform miracles, to grant forgiveness of sins, or show any kind of mercy. This divinity was self-proclaimed and was demanded by force, where Nimrod forced people to worship him as God. By leveraging Nimrod in the first line, Ghalib not only reminds us of the attributes of Nimrod's divinity, but more importantly, reminds us of the outcome of it. As we saw, Nimrod, despite all his power and claims of being God, could not be God. He landed up becoming an example through who God displayed how helpless a human is without God on his side. To be punished and killed by a lame mosquito was a humiliating, painful, and torturous end for Nimrod, who had spent most of his life humiliating, hurting, and torturing people. The outcome of such divinity is a hollow shell with no substance inside it. Now, this first line can also be read as a question. क्या वो नमरूद की खुदाई थी? In the sense, was that divinity similar to that of Namrud? And this question Ghalib is actually asking himself. That the divinity that I indulged in, क्या वो नमरूद की खुदाई थी? Was it the type of divinity Namrud indulged in? Right? And in this second scenario, we see Ghalib almost talking to himself, wondering and speculating in this first line. And this is what Ghalib is wondering about. Is it possible that this beloved, who to me seems nothing short of divinity itself, is it possible that I have misunderstood her divinity? Is it possible this human I think of as an angel, as someone next to God in spirituality, is actually a reflection of King Nimrod? Because kya wo does bring a questioning tone to the first line. Kya wo? Is it possible? Is it plausible? Is this what happened? Is this what lies at the center of my Khuda and my Khudai, my God and my divinity? In times of disappointment, at the hands of the beloved, Ghalib captures in the first line a poignant moment where the lover speculates and questions if his faith in the beloved is misplaced. The lover doubts his assessment of beloved's spirituality in this moment. The beauty of this question lies in the fact how it stands true for any believer. Whether it is the lover who believes and worships the beloved, whether it is the righteous who believe and worship God, in moments of despair, in moments of misfortune, in moments of grief, the believer may, for a moment, question the divinity of his God, question what he believes in, question what he worships. Ironically, this questioning itself is embedded in the believer's belief that if he was worshipping the true God, he would not be facing misfortune and grief, or would be receiving relief in answer to his prayers. So, like we said, क्या वो नमरूद की खुदाई थी can be interpreted in two ways. So that takes care of the first line. Let's move on to the second line. बंदगी में मेरा भला ना हुआ. In service, in worship, in devotion, nothing good happened for me. In this second line, Ghalib details the second approach to divinity. This approach is totally opposite to the divinity approach we covered in the first line with reference to King Nimrod. The second approach to divinity is embedded in true faith and belief in the one and only God, humility, humbleness, and grace. In this divinity, God does have the ability to grant blessings and perform miracles. God does have the ability to grant forgiveness of sins and show mercy. This divinity makes no demand and uses no force. This divinity is a free will choice made by the believer to serve the one and only God. Ghalib states that this second approach to divinity is the one he opted for. This approach Ghalib took was grounded in humility and humbleness and serving, bandagi mein, right? Ghalib says, unlike Nimrod, I chose with free will to serve and worship my divine God. But alas, this approach did not yield a positive outcome for me. Mera bhala na hua. Nothing good came out of it for me. Now the bandagi Ghalib mentions in this second line can be interpreted either as towards the divine beloved or towards the divine God himself. But in DGMZ's humble opinion, this differentiation in the world of love does not matter, since for the lover, both the entities merge into one. For the lover, ishq hi bandagi hai. For the lover, love is God, God is love. Loving the beloved is the worship, or is the form of worship the lover does. Baka-ullah baka ka ye sher. इश्क में बू है किब्रिया की. इश्क में बू है किब्रिया की, आशिकी जिसने की खुदाई की. Approximate translation is, in love there is a fragrance, there is an essence of magnificence of God. Therefore, whoever loves is actually worshipping the divine God. This love that the lover feels for the beloved has the power to bring him closer to God automatically. फिराक गोरखपुरी का ये शेर, मैं ये तो नहीं कहता कि बशर दावाए खुदाई कर बैठे. मैं ये तो नहीं कहता कि बशर दावाए खुदाई कर बैठे, फिर भी गमे इश्क से इंसान में कुछ शान खुदा आ जाती है. The approximate translation is, I do not say that humans should start proclaiming themselves as gods. But the fact of the matter is that once you have gone through the grief of love, there is a certain type of godliness that you develop, that you emit. Now, another masterful stroke in this second line is the choice of the word Bandagi by Ghalib, which can play in two ways and does play in two ways in the couplet. The first meaning of Bandagi that plays out in this line is worship. By extension, worshipping of the beloved by the lover as one would worship God himself. Sheikh Ibrahim Zauq का ये शेर, तुम जिसे याद करो फिर उसे क्या याद रहे, ना खुदाई की हो परवाह ना खुदा याद रहे. The approximate translation is, the one you start remembering forgets everything. He will forget divinity, he will forget God if you start remembering him. Now, the second meaning of bandagi that plays out in this line is actual captivity or bondage to someone. By extension, the lover is in bandagi or in captivity of the beloved because of his love for her. We know for the lover to be bonded to the beloved is not a torture or a bad thing. In fact, it is what the lover desires. The lover does not want a freedom that takes him away from the beloved. कोकब मुरादाबादी का ये शेर, ए खुदा इश्क में मेहनत मेरी बर्बाद ना हो. ए खुदा इश्क में मेहनत मेरी बर्बाद ना हो, दिल गिरफ्तारे वफा है कहीं आज़ाद ना हो. The approximate translation is, Dear God, let not all the labors of my love go to waste. This heart that is bonded, that is captive in loyalty to the beloved, let this heart never ever be free. So, as we can see, bandagi can play out both ways, either as worship or bonded to the beloved, and both stand true. Both make sense in terms of this couplet. So, to sum up the second line, we see Ghalib lament the fact that despite his unshakable, unwavering worship and bondage to his divine beloved, the fact of the matter is that it did not do him any good. It was not for his well-being. Now let's take a step back and look at the couplet one final time in totality. Once again, we see the Maestro Ghalib in only 12 words give us an elaborate, vivid, detailed canvas that captures deep and intense multi-layered concepts. Ghalib in this couplet states that he as a lover, to the best of his knowledge, made two wise choices. The first wise choice was to not opt for the self-obsessed, self-proclaimed style of divinity of Nimrod, since history shows that Nimrod's divinity brought him no good in the end. The second wise choice he made as a lover was to opt for the dignity and worship of his beloved with humility and humbleness. These choices are highlighted by the contrast Ghalib creates between Khudaai in the first line and Bandagi in the second line. Ghalib states that despite these two wise choices made by him as a lover, unfortunately, the outcome for him was not good, was not positive. His dedicated loyal worship to divinity did not work well for him. His prayers went unanswered. His trials and tribulations remained unresolved. As a devotee, Ghalib highlights the unfair hand that has been dealt to him despite his dedication and worship. राना अमीर लियाकत का ये शेर, होता है मेहरबां कहाँ पर खुदाए इश्क, लगती है फिर भी शहर में खुल के सदाए इश्क. Beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is, where do you ever see the God of love, by extension beloved, ever being merciful, ever being generous, right? But nevertheless, every day in the town you will see the prayers, the cries, the laments being sent out in the name of love by the lovers. So the prayers don't get answered ever, anywhere, by the God of love, but nevertheless the lovers will will keep sending out prayers, will keep sending out their requests to the God of love. असलाम सैफी का ये शेर, बंदगी क्यों ना रास आती है, क्या ये नमरूद की खुदाई है. Again the same vibe. The approximate translation is, why is this worship sorry, why is this worship, why is this divination not working for me? Is my divination that of Nimrod, that it has nothing good coming out of it? So that brings us to the end of क्या वो नमरूद की खुदाई थी, बंदगी में मेरा भला ना हुआ. Now today we have both a good story and a lovely short ghazal to end the episode with. What would you prefer, the story or the ghazal? Well, we will not have you make that difficult choice. We will give you both. We will first give you the story and then we will give you the ghazal. So, story. This story is in fact a small story embedded in the story of Namrud that we already covered as part of the episode. So, this is how it goes. This story happens when King Nimrod is ordering the huge fire to be built, intending to throw Abraham into it as punishment for his defiance. The wood was getting stacked high, the flames were burning with intensity, and as the moment approached, a huge silence fell over everybody watching when Abraham was thrown into the fire. Now, unbeknownst to the onlookers, a tiny Ababil bird was perched in a tree, witnessing the impending injustice towards Abraham. In Islamic tradition, Ababil refers to a group of birds mentioned in the Quran that are believed to have protected the Kaaba from Abraha's elephant army. These birds are said to have pelted the army with stones, causing their defeat. The word Ababil can also refer to a common swift bird known for its incredible flying ability. Coming back to our story. As the bird saw Abraham in the fire, without hesitation, Ababil sprang into action. With a compassionate heart, the little bird collected water from a nearby river in its beak. Returning to the scene, Ababil released the drops over the raging fire. Several larger birds nearby watched and mocked the little bird, asking, "Why are you carrying water?" Ababil replied, "To put out the fire around Prophet Abraham." The larger birds laughed and said, "How can you extinguish such a huge fire with so little water? It's pointless and useless." But the little bird had a profound response. She said, "I believe God will not judge me based on whether I succeeded in putting out the fire or not. He will judge me and ask me about what I did to try and stop the fire." Upon hearing this, the larger birds fell silent. Ababil knew that a few drops of water might not extinguish the fire, but it also understood that though a few drops of water wouldn't put out the fire, nonetheless, it had a responsibility to contribute to the best of its abilities in any way it could. So that was a small sub-story from the larger Nimrod story that we covered. Now, moving on to the ghazal we chose for today. This ghazal is by Katil Shifai, and it beautifully captures multiple concepts from today's couplet, including Nimrod, Prophet Abraham, divinity, and belief in the one and only God. So, this is how it goes. The title of the ghazal is "वो शख्स कि मैं जिससे मोहब्बत नहीं करता." वो शख्स कि मैं जिससे मोहब्बत नहीं करता, हंसता है मुझे देख के, नफरत नहीं करता। पकड़ा ही गया हूं तो मुझे दर पे खींचो, सच्चा हूं मगर अपनी वकालत नहीं करता। क्यों बख्श दिया मुझसे गुनहगार को मौला, मुनसिफ तो किसी से भी रियायत नहीं करता। घर वालों को गफलत पे सभी कोस रहे हैं, चोरों को मगर कोई मालामात नहीं करता। किस कौम के दिल में नहीं जज्बाते इब्राहिम, किस मुल्क पे नमरूद हुकूमत नहीं करता। देते हैं उजाले मेरे सजदों की गवाही, मैं छुप के अंधेरे में इबादत नहीं करता। भूला नहीं मैं आज भी आदाब जवानी, मैं आज भी औरों को नसीहत नहीं करता। इंसान ये समझे कि यहाँ दफन खुदा है, मैं ऐसे मज़ारों की ज़ियारत नहीं करता। दुनिया में कतील उससा मुनाफिक नहीं कोई, जो जुल्म तो सहता है बगावत नहीं करता। वो शख्स कि मैं जिससे मोहब्बत नहीं करता, हंसता है मुझे देख के, नफरत नहीं करता। All right, that brings us to the end of this episode. We genuinely hope you enjoyed the episode, all the stories and the great canvas that Ghalib drew for us today. As always, we will be very keen to hear your comments and feedback. Now, for the new viewers, a strong recommendation. If you get time, please go through the episode titled Introduction to DGMC, because that will give you a good insight into the inspiration and motivation behind this podcast. For regular viewers, whenever you get time, do go surf the home page of the channel. It has playlists segregated by our topics. Surf through them and pick a episode that interests you. As always, I will end this episode by sending a lot of love and light to all you dear viewers, and thanks for watching.